Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Bullpen. In the Bullpen today, we got Charles Love, Executive Director, Seeking Educational Excellence, and host of the Charles Love Show. Charles, good day. Welcome to Indisputable. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing quite well. I don't want to presume what you know or believe about critical race theory and patriotic education. So if you would, give us some of your background, your perspective as it relates to CRT and K through 12 education.
Wow, this has been a crazy few months debating this, and I think I've been listening to a lot of the conversations, and I don't know where to go from CRT in K through 12, as you mentioned it, because I don't think it's being taught under the guise of that title. So
correct.
Yeah, so I don't know if that is the issue, so to speak. I hear that being the debate. I don't like getting into the debate as to what is CRT and does this person really know what CRT is?
Well, let me say something to that, because I think you make a great point. Because the anti-critical race theory bills that have been posited by Republican lawmakers and governors, they impact only K through 12 education. So when they have a press conference and they hold rallies, and at the signing ceremony, they say things like, this is anti-CRT. Well, critical race theory is not even inside of the legislation they're signing. So you have basically said the same thing that many of us have been saying. Right. They're not passing legislation against critical race theory, because critical race theory has never been taught in K through 12 education. So why have they made CRT the villain in this entire political and legislative narrative?
Well, see, I don't know if we can really say that CRT hasn't been taught directly. And I'm not saying, and I agree with what you said. That is the problem, is some people define it in its original sense. Others say that it's not what it originally was, as legal studies, but somebody took that idea and said, let me build on it. And then they wanted to do something else with it. And so whether you call it that or not is kind of separate. I don't know from a legislation standpoint. I mean, I guess I know why they're doing it. There are definitely concerns with the way education is being shifted and kind of made political. It's like we're bringing our political debates into the classroom with young kids, which I do have a problem with. But I don't know how effective the legislation will be. And I've argued that they may not be as effective as they want them to be, because like you said, are they teaching that? So what I notice is, for instance, so all the bills are a little different, but if you say, well, you can't teach racial essentialism, okay, but what that teacher is doing that you may have a problem with, and they may be right that it's concerning, but it may not be who defines, I guess let's go there. Who defines what race essentialism is? Is it, because I would define it as saying one race is better than another. And I would agree, you shouldn't teach that in school.
But that's not taught, that's not even
right, but is that
in critical race theory. But let me tell you, let me push back on a couple of items. And to some degree, it's semantics, okay? I actually do believe that education should talk about politics. I believe that. Let me tell you why. The word political actually means to be concerned with the affairs of your country or nation. That's what the word means. Political does not inherently mean partisan. I do not agree with partisan education, but I do agree, and I'm okay with political education based on the definition and design of the word political. Let me take you to Texas, for example. Texas passed a bill out of their Senate chamber that said, if you teach things like white supremacy, if you teach things like the KKK, you cannot teach that it was morally wrong. So you cannot give deference in the teaching is the language of the bill, which means if you teach it, you must present it based on a non-moral premise. And here's the reality, man. I'm a former high school teacher. I'm a current college professor. There is a moral lesson in academic studies. There's a moral lesson in historical studies. There's a moral lesson in political studies. There's a moral lesson in American studies. So if you take away the morality of the lesson, now you're taking away a large percentage of why education is even necessary in the first place. We're not trying to teach students for the sake of them having head knowledge. We're teaching students for the sake of them to be morally and socially developed individuals to make better decisions about their future and their society around them. So why would you take away the moral application of the lessons we have learned historically in this nation?
Well, see, I can't really speak to the parameters they put on the bill, but one of the problems I find with the moral aspect is the way the culture has shifted, which is what I pay attention to the most, and I'm more concerned with, because in that sense, now, from what you said, there's nothing wrong with what you said, except the culture has shifted so much now, we all have very different understandings of what morality is. So I'm not saying that legislators should put this tight rein around it, because you never know when you squeeze it where it's gonna go. But I will say that if you're saying that morals should be there, and we don't necessarily agree on what those morals are, so you might be fine with a teacher saying, well, the KKK is bad and slavery is bad and white people doing this is bad, and be totally fine. But then a teacher may come up and say that morally, I believe the total opposite of what you believe. I believe that the Nazis were right. Right, and then they should be able to teach that because morally they think it's okay. Because you have to have a basis of whose morals you're following.
Okay, let's do this. History gives us a great analysis of who were the bad guys and who were the good guys, right?
No, that's not true. That is not true.
Well, let me explain. Let me explain where I'm coming from with that. Historically speaking, 4 to 6% of white people in America agreed with the philosophy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. That's it. That was an NBC poll that was done for white America. Fast forward a few decades later, now the vast majority of white Americans were for the ideology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. History had a way of looking back at that era and saying he was right, and the white people that opposed him, well, they were wrong. So we have some clear moral principles here. And if we're saying we cannot clearly identify some level of moral principle, like we have to be able to clearly say the KKK is bad. But we have to be able to clearly say slavery was an evil and unnecessary. We have to be able to clearly articulate these things in our educational systems. Do you not agree?
Well, no, the problem is you're conflating what's actually happening in the schools. You're believing that the people who are coming out against CRT, as they're calling it, or whatever problems they have with the education in K through 12 today, that problem is a history problem, and that is not what the argument is. So, for instance, there was something today. A lot of it is not, it's race or gender focused, but it would be nowadays in the schools. You're talking about a kid, let's say 9 to 12 years old, can go to school and say they want to change their gender. And they should be able to do this without the parents knowing they're doing this, and the schools sign off on it. And they have forms and ways to process this and all that stuff. So some will find that to be immoral. So we're saying that it's okay for schools to do that today. So when a parent stands up and said, I have a problem with you telling my 8, 9, 10-year-old daughter or son that they can do this and do it behind my back, they're gonna say that they're standing on a moral standing, and history will say that they're right for letting that kid change his gender.
Okay, man, listen, brother. You're making a classic mistake in the debate. You're utilizing a microcosm and an extreme variation.
Are you saying that it's not happening?
Allow me to finish, brother.
Are you saying it's not happening though?
Brother, allow me to respond to you. I allowed you to get your thought fully out. You're utilizing a microcosm and an extreme variation of the argument in order to explain the argument itself. So let me give you another side of this. If we're talking about K through 12 education, right? And that has been basically the point of contention. School board meetings, parents fighting, and right now the big thing are the mask. It was CRT. Now it has shifted to the mask, right? Well, we've already settled right here on this show, critical race theory is not being taught in K through 12 education. Let's talk about this fundamentally, right? This was a false pretext by the political class of conservatives in order to trick parents into believing that critical race theory was even being taught. CRT is an advanced theoretical framework. I teach CRT. I've been teaching critical race theory since 2016. I was taught by Dr. Chika Kua, who's a world-renowned African scholar. And this isn't something that's even taught typically in undergraduate studies in college. So it's not CRT. I don't care what you say they think it is. It's not that. It's like saying you're teaching calculus to students just because you're teaching them math. It's not calculus then. That's what that means. So you're not teaching critical race theory just because you're telling the truth about the racist history of the United States of America. And I don't see a problem teaching the truth of our history because I don't believe you can change what you fail to acknowledge. If we fail to acknowledge the reality of our country, then how can we ever hope to remedy the problems of our history? Do you agree with me on that?
The last piece, yes, but you did the exact same things you claimed I was doing.
How?
Because I never said that. In fact, we started this conversation off agreeing that it wasn't CRT. You are making the same mistake. You're getting hung up on a title. You just want to keep saying that. You said that I needed to let you finish, and now. May I? Thanks.
No, brother. I just
so now you're saying that
I'm not getting hung up.
So I'm supposed to let you finish, but you're not going to let me finish.
I just said quickly, I'm not getting hung up on the title, brother. I will respond fully to you when you finish, though.
But you're gonna let me finish, correct? Thanks. So CRT, I said CRT wasn't being taught, and you keep harping on. See what they're teaching is not CRT. This is some political thing. No, it's parents saying, I don't want this race focus. It's not history. That is a ploy. They are not coming to the school board saying, I just don't want. I'm white and I don't want to learn about Black history. I don't want to learn the truth of history. It's not the truth of history. It's either people taking what is factual in history and switching around things, omitting things. Right.
Okay.
So it's that. It's telling kids, it's separating kids by race. It's telling young kids that because you're white, you have a debt to pay to the Black student in your class and things of that nature.
Okay. Who's taught that?
So you thought I was going to come here with a list of every teacher who's done that?
No, I mean if you make that proclamation against. Hold on, brother. If you make that proclamation.
Are you saying
if you make that proclamation, an allegation against school teachers, what school teacher do you know that has taught that white children are evil or bad?
I never said evil. So how can we have an honest discourse when you change the words I say?
Okay, so what are you saying?
Say I'm supposed to come in here. I'm supposed to come in here with an itemized list of every school board.
So let me give you my itemized list.
San Diego said they wanted to stop using grades.
Yes, sir, brother. I do expect you to come prepared, brother. So let me show you what preparation looks like.
So you keep talking over me. What do you mean come prepared? San Diego said that it is unfair to grade Black and brown students and include attendance and things of that nature, as if to imply that Black students can't show up to school on time. It's like
I'm going to respond to that in a second.
Go ahead.
Okay, all right. So when we talk about this CRT element, we have already established, and I just want you, brother, I just want you to agree for the record clearly. You do agree that critical race theory is not being taught in K-12 education, right?
By name.
Okay. Why is it that 94% of Republicans believe that critical race theory is taught in K-12 education? Where did that come from?
Don't know. Not a Republican. You
don't know?
You asked me why do Republicans believe something? Of course I don't know why somebody believes something. I know that if a parent has a problem with things, what'd you say?
I'm gonna tell you why when you finish. I know why they believe it.
You don't know.
Yes, I do.
You're gonna tell me why you think they do.
I'm gonna tell you why I know they believe it.
Okay, go ahead. I'd love to hear this.
Critical race theory has been around since the 50s. It was formalized late 60s, early 70s. It has never been taught in K-12 education, and it did not become a great evil. Hell, 1/5 of America didn't even know what it was until Donald Trump said it was a great evil. It became a great evil when Donald Trump signed a federal executive order saying that if there was any diversity inclusion training that included the teaching of critical race theory or CRT, which by the way, some of them did in order to explain the framework of it, he said that they would be defunded. Once Donald Trump said critical race theory was a great evil, all of a sudden school boards across the United States of America, Republican members of Congress, they decided to say the same exact thing. The truth is, you've never been taught critical race theory in K through 12 education. I wasn't taught it in K through 12. Your children are not taught it in K through 12. And it has been around for decades without any push from the Republican Party until Donald Trump said it wasn't evil. You think that's a coincidence?
So are you telling me that the only reason parents are upset about the negative things that are being taught in their schools is because Donald Trump told them to be?
The reason why parents are going to school boards saying stop teaching our children critical race theory when it's not even being taught.
You're not answering my question though, because I didn't ask you about CRT.
I am answering your
question. But I'm not asking you about CRT. I said parents who see the curriculum, see what the teachers are doing, are upset about it. Are they upset about it? The same parents, brother.
The same parents that believe.
So they're upset because of Donald Trump.
These are the same parents that believe some mythical creature stole the damn election from Donald Trump.
Totally untrue. I speak to they aren't even conservatives. What are you talking about,
brother? The same parents that believe what happened at the Capitol on January 6th was appropriate. Over 70% of Republicans agree.
We're doing your viewers a disservice by feeding them this nonsense. You're doing them a disservice by feeding them this nonsense.
They're the ones
that I talk to aren't Republicans. So I don't, because the parents that I hear complaining about what's going on in these schools aren't even conservatives, and you have your people believing that this is a Donald Trump infused thing, and they believe this stuff. They see the things the kids coming home.
Listen, I don't have unlimited time. What are they upset about being taught? What precisely?
I just told you they're upset about being taught that race is essential in this cultural pedagogy they need to teach about teaching black kids differently from other kids by saying that blacks and whites are different in certain respects, by telling them that the white kids should treat the black classmates differently, that everything should have a black focus or a race focus, not necessarily a black focus. So you can go on believing this is Donald Trump, but
Donald Trump definitely is a catalyst to it. Let me get to the other part of what you wanted to talk about. You are a promoter of something called patriotic education.
That's also not true. Do you lie for your host?
This is a note that I have that.
Read a quote where I said something about patriotic education.
Hold on, brother. If I'm wrong about you supporting patriotic education, I will apologize and say I'm wrong.
Okay,
do you support patriotic education?
I've never even heard of it, don't even know what it is.
Okay, all right, well, obviously I got a wrong production note and I do apologize to you.
All right.
So what kind of education do you support?
Honest education, actual education.
So you support honest history, right?
Right.
That this country was founded and rooted in bias and racism. Right?
Oh my God, are you funny? So what I mean by honest history is that you can teach the bad and the good. You can teach the bad of America, but people like the people who support CRT, like you want to use that frame, or 1619, they don't want to teach anything positive. So they say, let me show you all the bad of America, and they don't teach anything positive.
I'm not concerned about them for this debate.
So I'm saying, you ask me what I want to talk. I want good and bad. So you can't only teach negatives about America.
Okay,
you can't teach
my question still stands, brother. Do you agree that this country was founded based on the premise of racism and bias? You do not. Well, why is it that you and I were considered in the Constitution 3/5 of a man? Why?
Oh my God, you're an educator and you believe that?
Sir, it was in the Constitution. It was the 3/5 compromise. Wow. Now you tell me, you enlighten us. Why does the Declaration of Independence? Why does the Declaration of Independence call Native American savages?
Am I answering the first question, or are we just going to keep throwing stuff at you? Okay. Well, the 3/5 clause obviously was not to say that you were 3/5 of a man. That's not true. It is absolutely not true, and I have to believe you know that. I have to believe you know that.
Brother,
it is the slave-holding states, but you keep talking. The slave-holding states wanted to count slaves to get greater representation in Congress,
in the electoral college, so that they can have power in Congress and in national politics.
More power, not to give
so black men were counted as how black men were counted as 3/5 of a person.
Can see that you're not allowing me to speak, right?
Brother, are you for how the Constitution was written in order to write out black people? Were you for that or you against that?
This is insane.
Brother, that's a simple ass question. You for that or against that? Was it right or was it wrong?
I'm for people understanding actual history, knowing the truth, and not the silliness that you're talking about.
The silliness, the way the Constitution was written was silly and immoral.
You just said you were 3/5 of a man. That is not true.
The Constitution said that. Look at you, brother. Look at you,
man. I'm not.
Why did the Declaration of Independence call our native brothers savages? Why did it do that?
What else did Thomas Jefferson write about slavery?
I'm asking you a direct question,
and I'm
brother.
asking you a direct question. What else did Thomas Jefferson say slavery was good?
The second part of the question that I posed.
Did he say slavery was good?
Brother, the second part of the question I posed to you. Why? Why did the Declaration of Independence call our native brothers savages?
You tell me why.
Have a good day, brother. If you don't know that, if you don't know where
I
that
know.
came from,
You
don't
just
deserve
twist
to
the
be on my
word.
show. If you don't know where that came from,
I don't need to deserve to be on your show unless you're gonna continue to lie, right?
What am I lying about? The Declaration of Independence called our native brothers savages. Where's the lie?
The lack of context.
Well, give it then. These were racist SOBs who wrote it. That's my context. What's your
right? That's your context. What did Thomas Jefferson write about slavery?
Brother,
James Madison.
Listen, man, I don't
George Washington. You don't know. Well, actually, you know. You just don't want to say.
Brother, I'm answering the question, brother.
Okay, go ahead.
I'll be damned. I don't give a damn what you wrote when you supported and owned slaves and participated in the industry of slavery. Why would I give a damn what letter you penned? You're engaging in the evil that you're saying that others should not. Why were natives called savages in the Declaration of Independence, brother? Why?
Well, you were doing a disservice.
You can't do it, can you? You can't
because
say
it makes no sense.
You can't say it.
Because I can say that people are flawed? Yeah, I can say that.
That's people are flawed. Were they racist? Were they bigoted? Were they evil?
Of course they were. A lot of people were, yes.
Good.
But that's not the whole of them. But that is not the whole.
Brother, I'm not talking about the whole. I'm talking about those bad apples.
No, I'm not just talking about the whole of that person. That is not the whole of that person's existence.
Huh?
Thomas Jefferson.
Brother, that's between them and God, brother. The whole of their existence. I don't judge the whole of anybody.
But you're acting as if there's no good. So there's nothing good in the Constitution because of the part you didn't like.
If you engage,
there's nothing good in the Declaration of Independence because of what you say he said about natives.
If you engage in systemic oppression and racism against my community,
no, there's
I
nothing
don't give a damn what
there's
else
nothing
you have
good in the
done.
Constitution. Well, then you admit that there's nothing good in the Constitution. The Constitution is wholly bad because of its authors. Right?
Oh yeah, part of it. Hell yeah.
So it's wholly bad. Okay, so there we go. That's now we've actually come to a consensus. Thank you.
Absolutely, part of it is completely biased. You have biased racism. You have extremism inside the Constitution. It's riddled with mistakes. That's why you have amendments to the Constitution. I do appreciate you being on the show. My producers are telling me to wrap it up. Thank you, brother.